Joining me is Greg Piche. He's a healthcare lawyer in Denver, Colorado, and also author of the new book, Sham Peer Review. So, Greg, I think a good place to start is for people who don't know about the peer review process in medicine. Give us a brief overview of that, and then why you believe it to be a sham.
Well, sham peer review is peer review of physicians, essentially, by other physicians. And that comes up in the context of hospital privileges. Sometimes it comes up in the context of licensure actions by state medical boards. And not all peer review is sham peer review, but there is a distressingly high level of peer review that is brought for reasons other than the quality of care and patient protection. And that's the concern that I'm writing about.
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the way in which peer review can become sham peer review would be, for example, something that for political or personal popularity reasons is or is not reviewed, and also the quality and nature of those reviews can often depend on much more than just the research. For example, and tell me if this scenario rings true, if I have been asked to peer review something that another doctor is working on, and I'm kind of working on the same thing, except I'm a couple of months behind, I might be inclined to review that negatively so that in 2 months I can be the one whose name is attached to a certain piece of research.
Well, that kind of peer review does come up often in the context of education and educational institutions and research. But my primary focus is when it comes up in the context of a medical staff situation where one is reviewed by one's peers, and then there are economic reasons for, like competitive reasons, why actions are brought. And it's not infrequent that the people bringing the actions have a far worse track record than the person that is being peer reviewed.
So whenever I talk shit about peer review, I get some hate mail about people apparently I'm picking on the best thing since sliced bread. You're mean and evil. That's true, I am. Look, peer review is good, but it doesn't mean it's not without its problems, and they are glaring, gaping, endemic, and everyone knows about them, and some people will exploit them. Enter Mark Hauser, a former professor of psychology at Harvard. He had to resign in disgrace for, 8 confirmed bits of academic fraud, scientific misconduct. That was a couple of years ago, and finally the United States government has finished its investigation into, I think it's 3 articles that have had to be either retracted or corrected, where he just would manufacture data or misreport data. And the funny thing is that a part of his work dealt with human morality. So, well played there, sir. You trolled us all. La 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 la. He, it's so weird, because after being a confirmed fraud, I mean, they've investigated, yep, he invented this shit, he defrauded the government. His punishment is so severe, whenever he applies for federal grants in the future, he has to get someone to sign up with him saying, I'll supervise him to make sure he doesn't lie to you again. Well, let's just hope he doesn't hang out with any other criminals, right? Whatever. Okay, peer review was 100% incapable of catching this. Now, that's not to say that peer review couldn't be made better, and might have caught this, but as it stands today, it won't, which is why I mention again PLOS ONE and its promise to publish any independently verified research. So if you're a lab and you do research and you go, oh shit, we got this result, we'll tell another lab about it and let them go do their own independent study, and then we'll go to PLOS ONE together. Because the research has been done by 2 labs independently of one another, PLOS ONE will just publish it, straight out. Because a redundant study showing the truth of, showing consilience with the first study is more vital, more important than just one study that shows it. Because now you've got 2. See what I'm saying? It's like they did it, and then this other group did it, and it's been reproduced, so this is a more secure result. Peer review could be fixed, it could be made dramatically better in weeks. All universities have to do is decouple publication and career advancement. Start making being a reviewer just as viable a role towards advancement. Let that start showing up on people's CVs. And by making the reviewers public, you're also putting the reviewers in the hot seat. Because if you're reviewing an article and you're not reviewing it the way that it should be done, and some shit comes down at the end, that's going to reflect on you too. As it is most places, the reviewers are secret. The public doesn't get to know who they are. So when you couple their work with their names, that will help in the literature, I would imagine. I don't claim to have all the answers, but serious people need to think about this. And this is an option that would work. Might not be the most elegant solution, but it is actually a solution. And journals, I hate to tell you, but you are actually part of the problem. This is your schema. You need to fix it. You need to start making these kinds of things mandatory. I'm sorry, no. We want this process to be transparent, start to finish.
And this leads us to the noted article in the Journal of Contemporary Religion. The context of the Zeitgeist Movement's inclusion in this article is presented as related to a phenomenon perceived by the authors called conspirituality, which is defined as a combination of New Age beliefs and conspiracy culture, in effect. Now, it isn't the scope of this essay to discuss the rather abstract linkage the authors are trying to draw, but I will say that the entire paper is based upon a series of self-defining, self-referring, extremely subjective, circumstantial presuppositions that haphazardly and crudely categorize a large number of counterculture-type groups in the world today. In a world today where 40% of the wealth is owned by 1% of the world's population, anyone who thinks there is no structurally based, self-interest-oriented manipulation for upper-class advantage is in an enormous level of denial about the nature of our reality today. And the use of the term conspiracy theorist recently has served those in power quite well by making all of those who realize such unfair social realities simply appear like irrational lunatics. So, as expected, this article takes the establishment perspective overall, painting the picture that any such realizations are all irrational conspiracy theories, and is in turn painted, in their words, as part of a politico-spiritual philosophy when combined with the New Age, which they define as, quote, mystical individual transformation, an awareness of new non-material realities, the imposition of personal vision into society, and belief in universally invisible but pervasive forms of energy, unquote. Okay, all of that denoted, let's step back and see how they fit the Zeitgeist Movement into all of this. On page 7 of the article extract, a section entitled The Emergence of Conspirituality, they begin to discuss the Zeitgeist Movement by sourcing a singular statement, very much out of context, and in a very misleading manner, from an old, obviously cherry-picked introductory essay called The Means is the End, which can be found archived online. They partially quote a paragraph which, to one who has not read anything else in the essay, provides absolutely no info about what the Zeitgeist Movement is, not to mention opening it up to large-scale semantic misinterpretations, obviously fitting their agenda. The quote is as follows, open quote, "The elite power systems are little affected in the long run by traditional protest and political movements. We must move beyond these establishment rebellions and work with a tool much more powerful. We will stop supporting the system while constantly advocating knowledge, peace, unity, and compassion. We cannot fight the system. Hate, anger, and war mentalities are failed means for change, for they perpetuate the same tools the corrupt, established power systems use to maintain control with. This could be called a spiritual awakening," unquote. First, the end statement, "this could be called a spiritual awakening," appears nowhere in the noted section and is completely out of context, only placed because they felt it was convenient. Not to mention that the entire context of the quote has nothing to do with New Age free thought and certainly devoid of anything suggesting conspiracy theory outside of the obvious acknowledgement I've already stated with respect to abuse in power, which has been rampant since the beginning of time. Also, since I stated that quote, for those that don't understand it, given my comments earlier, this is depicting a Martin Luther King, Gandhi-style non-participation, which is probably the strongest form of peaceful activism anyone can be a part of. And for those that don't understand that, please get out your history books and understand what nonviolent, non-participation activism actually is. It's extremely important. I suspect by the circumstances presented here that Martin Luther King and Gandhi, given their recognition of abuse from power and oppression from power, coupled with their interest to see humanity work together, I guess they would also be considered conspiritualists as well. So given the nature of the quote being truly absent of anything New Age or conspiracy-oriented, they circumvent this problem with the preceding paragraph stating the erroneous and long-debunked intent association regarding my 2007 film Zeitgeist, which again has nothing to do with the Zeitgeist movement. They state, quote, "The second quote is weighted towards conspiracy theory." This is, by the way, what they're referring to, the quote I just read. "It was taken from the Zeitgeist Movement, a website promoting global activism connected to Zeitgeist the Movie, a 2007 web movie. Zeitgeist alleges, among other things, that organized religion is about social control and that 9/11 was an inside job," unquote. And then that's when they actually have the quote that I just read. So you can see how this is framed. You know, I would like the authors of this article to provide one piece of evidence that the Zeitgeist Movement officially promotes anything denoted in my film Zeitgeist the Movie. How lazy can you be? The 40-plus hours of lectures, endless Q&As, town halls, Z-Days, media festivals. Is there one official publication, lecture, about 9/11 conspiracies that we denote, 9/11 truth, by myself or other prominent individuals representing the Zeitgeist Movement in talks? Is it any of our guides and PDFs? And while the belief systems in religion and their values are always going to be subject to scrutiny and interest of any group that's thinking about the broad ordering of society, nothing in my film, the first film, has anything to do with those contexts regarding the Zeitgeist Movement, which is extremely passive, and we have always denoted being completely open to all religions, seeing them as evolutionary consequences. Nevertheless, I do find it amusing that in one of the sources they have for those statements, it goes back to my zeitgeistmovie.com website, which in the Q&A they source actually has the following statement a few paragraphs down. It says, "The relationship of the films is mainly in gesture to the Zeitgeist Movement. While the films have served as an inspiration for the movement, the subject matter in the films is not to be confused with the main materials interests of the Zeitgeist Movement itself, which focus on values, resource economics, and sustainability. For example, TZM is not about 9/11, comparative religion, central banking, financial reform, or the like. In the world today, many are active in these areas and work to resolve them on a per-case basis. The Zeitgeist Movement is not interested in this. Its function is to find the source of problematic social phenomenon and act to resolve it at its core. This is why a completely new social system is expressed in the movement's material." Unquote. Obviously, they read that and ignored it. Nevertheless, the article then goes on in general to lump a number of subcultures into this new, obviously pejoratively angled conspirituality institution, then leading up to a final indication of the exceptional academic fallibility of the authors. It states, quote, "Providers have credentials and appear credible to many, despite promoting beliefs that often seem bizarre to non-subscribers. Jacques Fresco, inventor of Zeitgeist the Movie and the movement, is an architect." Does anyone else see something wrong with this statement? How could the authors, even visiting my personal film project website, zeitgeistmovie.com, made by the director, me, I mean, how do you mess that up? It sounds to me like they took a bunch of stuff and they didn't bother to fact check anything. And they probably had some really bad intern or somebody compile this conglomerate of subcultures, and they just went in and just threw this thing together. And it's really, really pathetic. And by the way, for those that don't know, Jacques Fresco is the director of the Venus Project. I have to tell you, though, if this is the state of our academia today, peer review academia, I am terrified.